Good morning. Welcome to the Joint Audit Committee meeting of the Seneca County IDA, the Seneca County EDC, and the Seneca County Funding Corporation. We've got all our members here for a quorum. So the first item agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 11th. I have a motion to approve the minutes. So moved. Motion approved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Minutes approved. The next is the engagement letter for the IDA, audit group. That's the M&D company. Do we have any discussion on this? Straightforward.
The fees are noted within the document,
Yes, I see that in the last page.
and it's, audit fee is $13,400. Single audit is $2,450. County total is $15,850. I would also point out that a peer review letter was included with the documentation. It's dated September 24th, 2024, indicating no issues and no peer reviews. That is an important element. It's required once every 3 years. So this is fairly current.
Yes, I want to point out that that this review has always been stellar for our organization. We get kind of bored if there's nothing to complain about.
What they do is peer review is a independently select audits that have been performed, and they do a forensic review of that audit. If there's issues that don't meet GAAP requirements, it would be so noted. What you don't want is a negative peer review.
Yeah. Do I have a motion to approve the letter of engagement? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Let's approve. So here's the last item is the budget that we've been sending out. We're going to discussion on the budget.
Yes. So, as we've looked at our operating performance over the last 18 months and have recognized that it is not trending in a positive direction on the revenue side. Historically, we've, I think, been able to assume that there will be activity that we're not aware of that we'll benefit from during the course of the year. I'm less and less convinced that there will be activity that we're not aware of that will just happen to come through the door. And so I have sat down with both Sarah and David and Kelly to develop a different approach to developing a budget. And essentially that approach is to identify 4 to 6 industry or economic sectors, and within each of those sectors identify likely for players to be announced, and then base a multiple year forecast, knowing that we've contacted, have had discussions with, and can evaluate whether or not there is a likely or not likely potential for those entities to be active in the market. And right now, as it stands right now, our pipeline, that is the funnel or the known activity is very, very small. And we have to change that by essentially outbound activity. And because our agreements often take a while to come to fruition. Being very optimistic about 2026, given where our pipeline is today, is unwise, I think, to be optimistic about 26. But that doesn't mean if we're doing the right things now and through the course of 26, we look at 27 and 28 as having at least, again, more confidence in what we may or may not see in those years. And again, we've had the benefit of some larger pilot agreements and agency fees that we're just not aware of that we can count on right now. So what we have here, is a very preliminary view of what our operating performance is going to be, and it shows a loss of $382,000. That's worst case, obviously. And what I would like to see, and what I'm asking Sarah and David to do, is come up with, if we're going to lose $382,000 in 2026, what is 2027 going to be? And then 2028, because eventually that runs out. So what this is, I would say, reflects an initial first draft without a complete review yet. That's my reading of it. Sarah, do you want to add anything?
We are still working on trying to get a better sense of some of those larger projects that have been in our pipeline, the ones that we know about, and figure out, are they not moving forward, or are they moving forward? And if they are, what is the actual timeline? Trying to get an updated, more realistic picture for this. So that is obviously a large part why the estimated agency fee right now is showing 0. That will presumably be updated before the board next meeting. The stuff that Bruce is talking about, I don't really anticipate us having much more. Those are going to be basically new strategies for our business retention and expansion and attraction efforts, where, as he said, we're going to be doing a lot more outbound and focused on certain strategic industries. Not to say that we won't do meet with other types of businesses or handle other types of projects, but those are going to be sort of our priorities, especially around some of the site development and things that we're planning to target with our defederalized money. But we're not likely to see projects when they come to fruition in the next 2 weeks out of that, to be put into our pipeline and into our budget estimate. That'll end up being a longer term pipeline growth.
Part of what we've been working on is taking a look at the so-called I-Corridor initiative, which is the tech sector really between Rochester and Syracuse, and looking at all the subsidiary businesses that may benefit from that, and then contacting all of them and finding out if they have any plans, or helping them determine if there are plans that they could pursue to participate in that business growth. And that's just for one of those sectors. The other is in the transportation and logistics sector, close to the thruway, property up there. There are business interests that would like to find a way to use some of that property. You need to know who they are, who the decision makers are, and how realistic are these things, and what's the timetable. It's just not a way to run a railroad to hope something's going to fly to the business. Doesn't work. And what ideally we developed initially a prototype of a budget for this year, where we looked at individual projects, looked at the benefit of the agency fee potential, and then we assign a likelihood. So if the agency potential was $100,000 and it was only 20% likely, we budgeted $20,000. So what our budget for 25 reflected was those estimates of likelihood on the estimate of the agency. At least two significant ones fell through. So that's the approach we're going to take. And I don't think it's going to have a huge material impact on 26, but it should have a material impact on 27. Anything that comes through the door or the window the old-fashioned way in 26, great, it'll happen. But in terms of agency fees that reflect our efforts and our engagement with this prospect, it's going to be a longer term thing. Questions, comments?
I agree that the IDA is in your position in that it has to be kind of a passive organization, but we got to be at the ready all the time.
Well, I don't think it needs to be that passive. I think it needs to be active to understand, okay, who are the businesses that might want to locate or expand here, and who are the businesses inside the county, who are the business outside the county. That's what our so-called business retention and expansion effort is supposed to do. I personally don't think it's been as effective as it could be. That's all. And if we come back and say, we've talked to 65 businesses, they fall into these categories. These are the principles. This is the nature of the discussions we've had, and nobody is putting a dime anywhere, which is possible. That's at least better to know than not know.
That's the what's so. And I'm in agreement with you. What I'm always impressed with though is that you can't compete with the banks, and we are supposed to be the incentive for projects that just are struggling and need just a little bit of extra help.
Right.
So we run a delicate balance of not having to go out aggressively to get business.
Well, my own feeling is that we can do a better job communicating to someone in that situation who's on the fence exactly what the benefit of the offer is.
I agree completely in that
communicated, and
what we're talking about is marketing, the understanding of what IDA is and how it fits in.
Correct.
Good. Any other observations on what your budget is?
Yeah, I mean, without that kind of understanding moving forward, I would have a really hard time recommending, the approval of a budget of $400,000 without a real plan. But, what are we going to do about it? Right? Instead of just going year to year, losing hundreds of thousands of dollars and doing, keeping that status quo. Well, this is what we did last year. They're doing this. We're running out of money in 4 years. Right. So, I mean, without something, real in place, real strategy in place, and I have a really hard time recommending the approval.
Other comments? So what's the timetable to submitting the budget is presented at the next IDA meeting? Is that correct?
October 14th.
And it needs to get posted to Paris before the end of October.
So that's the hard statutory deadline.
And that's the deadline, that's the deadline.
Yeah, and it takes Kelly a little bit of time because our budget doesn't neatly line up with the tariff system and the way that the numbers fit in. So she's presumably gonna need, a little bit of time at the end of the month. We can't be doing some sort of approval on like the 29th.
Got it.
Meaning October 29th.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So basically at 5.5 weeks. Okay,
So do we, Bruce, as you said, this is a bit of, and it's titled preliminary. When do we get together again to finalize it?
I think we need to go offline and come up with a schedule.
Okay.
And it's got, I mean, David and I spent some time on it. Sarah, before she was off, we met and discussed this. David and I spent some time with us on this topic this past week, where we looked at, okay, what is it that we need to do to communicate, to make it clear what the benefit is of working with the IDA. We got a first draft of that, and we need to then, David and Sarah, and, you know, then I think David, or if you were involved.
They had to do the working session.
And then, that's the kind of plan that Adam, that's the kind of plan that Adam was talking about, like the concrete steps moving forward. The action plan.
Well, we'll try and schedule that.
Okay.
The first one will be next week. Okay. David?
Yeah, I think it's just gonna boil down to education, teaching people what the IDA is, telling them what we're capable of, what benefits we have, you know, local municipalities, keeping an eye out for, I don't know, large purchases and, you know, anybody interested in,
What you're describing is a marketing plan, a strategy.
right.
With clear milestones, where are you going?
But yeah, but we also do need to dance that line, right? We're a nonprofit here. We have to seek out those businesses that wouldn't come here, you know, if not for this little nudge that we can give them.
Well, and
Through a pilot.
recognizing that we're not reinventing the wheel here.
Right.
The strategies are all out there. We're putting our focus on it.
Well, I'll be honest, I have never seen a one-page document that would tell me if I'm planning to invest $2.5 million in any kind of facility, what the actual hard dollar value of the standard pilot is. Well, just right there, just that. If I think missing.
Well, because it varies from project to project, obviously.
Well, okay.
But let's use an example.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just speaking from personal experience. When I was approached by a business in Tennessee, I was approached several times by a former executive director, by a representative. I did not. They didn't, what are you planning to do? What's the estimate of what it's going to cost you? How much you're going to spend on materials? How much you're going to spend on labor? What's the forecasted assessment on this facility? Tell me all of this. We'll help you figure that out. We'll get the county assessor to tell us what the assessed valuation will be after it's built, and then we'll construct a proposal that says you're gonna save this amount of money in the following categories: school, property, sales tax. That would have been really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Sarah does. That's what we
I
do.
did not get it.
Right, she wasn't there though.
We say we're doing all this,
Yeah.
but nothing's happened. That's the problem.
Right.
I've never.
Well,
seen
all
it.
we can do is
I've
let
never
them
seen
know.
it. I've never seen it in an easily digestible format for someone whose principal business is running a winery or you name it.
Right.
It's just not made transparent.
Well, I think we made that in the PowerPoint that you and I discussed, but
It's not there yet. We've got a first draft.
Right.
I don't think it's there yet. And it's got to be modified for different industries.
right.
Okay, well, we do that as a service for businesses that are talking about expansion projects. We've done it for Rogers, it was how they decided to move forward with incentives. We've done it for ITC, although that's obviously a little bit of a black eye for whatever reason right now, because they said they didn't want to move forward after going through their application. I'm still trying to get more clarity on that. We've done it for, Montezuma, you know, they ultimately didn't decide to come to us, but I think that's in part because they're in this kind of pirate, there is no town taxes, but those models are things that we do, and it's on a project by project basis, and it comes out of our VRME efforts, so, you know, Bruce, I know you never saw one in the past, obviously, because my predecessor wasn't doing that, and, you know, Jim Armstrong is not in a position to run models, but that is most certainly something that we do for people that are considering projects.
Part of the reason I'm stressing this right now is there are two new economic development organizations in the county. One is the Seneca County Local Development Corporation, and one is the town of Ovid's new local development corporation. I interviewed the county candidate for that LDC, and I'm a member of the Ovid LDC. I know who the counterparts on those boards are. I can guarantee you, none of them understand, even from square one, how the IDA works, or even how an LDC works. It's not easy. It's just not easy for people to get their heads around. And so I don't think we're going to be successful unless we're working with those other organizations and that everybody understands what each party is contributing. It's just not working right now. It's not to say it can't work, it's just not working. I mean, they're talking about airport expansions at the county LDC. Has anyone come to us and said, gee, if we spend this money on an airport expansion,
It's tax-free.
I mean, it's public property, so maybe there's nothing there. That's the kind of thing that we're not taking advantage of here. While at the same time, we're not seeing basic garden variety economic development. And that's kind of what we're here for.
Well, I think you outlined several things that we can start working on.
Right. So we have a budget to also.
Right. So we'll have a motion to table this right now.
I say this is a preliminary, I mean, I think that we're seeing the preliminary 2026 IDA budget. We have more work to do, and it's a first draft.
So do we accept this as a first draft, or do we table it and then go for it?
All I can say is all I would say is, thank you for presenting the first draft. We have to meet again to the final.
So we will have a meeting before the next board meeting of the IDA of this finance.
I think the finance committee needs to probably do the revision and then feel like it can recommend to the board that the 26 budget be done.
Yeah. So Sarah, does the committee have to meet in person, or can we do this electronically?
You have to meet in person, you have to do live stream, and we have an open meeting law.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check. So do we want to set a date now?
Sure.
So our next, I have it written down. What's the next IDA?
October 14th.
So it needs to be before that.
Right. Yep. The week before on the 7th, Tuesday the 7th. Friday the 3rd. Yeah, the 3rd. I can do that. We'll talk about 9 a.m. That work. I can do that.
What day is that again?
Friday, October 3rd. table this for now and meet on Friday, October 3rd.
Right.
Good. Any other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is closed. Thank you.
Next is the EDC audit committee. That's me. All right. I call the meeting to order for the joint IDA EDC, joint EDC audit committee. Starting with the approval of the minutes. Moved. Second. Oh, me. Just not here. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. All, any opposed? The minutes are approved. Second is the approval of the engagement letter for the 2025 EDC audit. Motion to approve the engagement letter. So, a second. Any discussion?
The only question I have, Sarah, was any changes made to this from what we went over the last full board meeting? It's still exactly the same?
Because of the possible dissolution, you mean, of the EDC?
Well, just any basic changes made to it. I haven't read.
So this engagement letter is obviously, the cost is different than the IGA. So this was a regular audit, $4,675. As a tax return, which is something that the IGA does not do, because our EDC is a 501c. I don't know if we're free, but I think we are. So we do have to follow, 990 every year, and that has to go on the IRS website, and it needs to be, our tax returns. So they assist us with our tax returns. That's $1,400 for a conventional, $6,075.
There's no deadline.
It's just a slight increase from last year, $225.
More than last year.
Yeah.
They usually raise their rate a little bit every year.
The budget reflects a different number.
Any other discussion? All in favor of accepting the engagement letter? Opposed? Accepted MMB's engagement letter. Final item is a review of the proposed budget for the board. Have that. At one time, we were contemplating some office renovation. That's not on the table. The expenses for the year are insurance and professional fees. Tell us, Sarah, if you would, what is currently the status of the EDC and whether or not the EDC should remain as an entity here?
Well, the current status is that it currently exists and has to be in compliance with, all New York State public authority, law matters and nonprofit law matters. We are still recommending to dissolve the EDC as of right now. Rob is working on putting together information on what that process is going to look like, and that's just taking a little bit of time. Which is why we haven't had a follow-up EDC board meeting to talk through, all the nitty-gritty of that.
So we're spending $10,000 a year keeping the EDC alive, and what is the reason we keep it alive?
For a while we had to. So the EDC was originally formed, intending to take title to the depot way back then. Then ultimately it was decided, and it was meant to do that to, reduce the liability for the IDA. The IDA didn't want liability. Then, I'm not sure what contributed to this, and maybe Bob can speak to it, but essentially the decision was made to actually, hold the depot properties in the IDA, although the EDC did act as a leasing agent for some time, so the EDC leased out the airstrip, prior to its, sale to Mr. Martin. There was also, leasing of, rail car storage for finger lace rail. So that's what contributed to a lot of the income that the EDC had, which is non-existent now. Sort of after that happened, Senator Mazzolio was a very big advocate, as you all know, for the veteran cemetery. And Sampson was county owned at the time, but needed somebody to manage it, and the EDC stepped in, at the senator's recommendation, and took over management of the cemetery operation for a decade, and paid all the expenses and everything associated with that. That, as you all recall, ended, I can't remember the year, but basically the same year that the cemetery became named first New York State Veteran Cemetery. That was only a few short years ago. After that, we did still have a pass-through grant to administer, to Mr. Martin for the galvanizing plant that was done through the EDC. But since then, there has been no, new activity, and there are no lingering projects or any reason to have to keep it from an administrative standpoint. So at this point, there is no action that would be keeping us from dissolving the agency.
Ralph, what's your view on keeping this open?
I don't see any point doing it.
I don't
Why,
either.
why spend money for something that's not doing something?
I agree.
I question too, Sarah, where's the $10,000 coming from every year that we need to do the audit and everything else to be going? I'm sure there'll be closing costs to get out of it.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be. I mean, we still have a little bit of funds left over in the EDC, from what was initially earned essentially from all of the rail cars. But it's dwindling, which is also what is motivating us to make this decision. Is, it only makes sense to recommend keeping the EDC if we can have, at minimum, a yearly break even. We attempted to puzzle through that with looking at the Better Reliable Loan program, couldn't find a way to make that work. The county has an LDC, as Bruce pointed out, Ovid has an LDC. There is no reason to keep ours. It's time to let go and let somebody else take over.
I think so. So we're just the audit committee here, but how do we, introduce closing the EDC to the board? Can we put that on the agenda?
We need to wait for the information from Rob before we can formally put it on the agenda.
Balance sheet should be documented.
Sure.
Sarah, with the possibility of the Willard property being transferred to the county, as I understand it, it has to kind of go through the IDA. Do we still need something like this, funding corporation for that transfer? If it should go forward?
That's a good question. Technically, no. So, there is nothing with the county LDC, like, there's nothing that the EDC that we run could do that the new county LDC could not do. So presumably, if the county government decides they want the title to Willard to stay within an LDC, they could put in the new county one. There's no need for us to have an organization.
I think it's overhead. Before we vote to dissolve it, we need to see the full picture. But I think we can probably get that. How do we get the full picture? Yeah. How do we get the full picture of both the likely P&L and balance sheet to review with the board?
I can ask Ellie to get those done so that we can have them at our EDC meeting on October. I mean, we're not gonna be ready yet, I don't think at that point. I can follow up with Rob on it, but I don't think we're gonna be ready yet to vote in October on dissolving it. It might be, November or December. At this point, we need to get, the budget approved because that will need to be done. And we'll still need to do an audit and everything, in the new year. So at this point, this is business as usual until we have the actual concrete next step from our legal counsel on what we need to do to dissolve and what that looks like.
Can we ask Rob to provide that to us?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
This number is a 26 number, but it's gonna have to happen. Still have to have it.
We still have to have the audit for 26.
In the
Up to
budget.
25 audit.
And can that include the closeout then, if we reach that point? Because
Still have to have it.
So I mean, would it be two things or would it be one thing? The audit for 2025, if Rob gets stuff together by October, November, do we have a closeout budget or whatever it needs to say this is the end of it? Dissolving it?
Potentially.
The sooner the better, I would
Yeah,
say.
it's a distraction, it's overhead, it's confusing to everyone that's
I think
involved.
if we get into 2026, then we're gonna say, just like Bob, we're gonna need another one in 2027. Yeah,
The can gets kicked down the road.
exactly. And the sooner we stop kicking the can, the better we all are.
And we stop kicking the can. What's the timetable for stuff, for no longer kicking the can? Is to get Rob to provide a timetable and then act on it in a way that doesn't have us here a year from now having the same discussion. Can we ask him for that?
Yeah.
Okay? Any other discussion? Other business?
We'll need a vote on the budget.
Okay. The budget as it stands for 26, I would entertain a motion on either accepting or not accepting the budget.
So move to accept.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Approve the budget for 2026. Motion to adjourn. So move. Second, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Adjourn on EDC. Now it's the funding report. I think that's you, Bob.
Okay, first item on the agenda is approval of the audit committee meeting minutes of March 11th, 2025.
So move. Second.
Any questions or concerns? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item is the funding corp engagement letter. Documents included. And if I read this correctly, it's anticipated the fee will be not exceeding $2,850 and $725 for the audit work relating to supplemental. Ask for a motion to approve the engagement letter.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. The final item is the 2026 budget. Proposed budget for 2026. Anticipated interest of $1,500, that's total revenues. Expenses, management in general, $4,575, made up of the auditor, $335.75. Legal costs estimated to be $1,000. Special fees and payments, $500. Miscellaneous, $500. Total expenses, $5,575, giving us a net loss anticipated for 2026 of $4,075. Any questions relating to the budget?
No.
I would ask approval, all in form of a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks for adjournment.
No.
Motion to adjourn?
Other business. Somebody, if I may, we have the same discussion around the funding course that we've had around the EDC.
We will when we're able to. We cannot at this point. The funding corp has to stay around so long as the bond is out for the, well, it's not the chiropractic college anymore, but it's now the Northeast College of Health Sciences. The funding corp, provided that a facility is bound for that. And so we have parish reporting obligations annually until that is done.
I know, are we receiving any benefits from that financially?
We did receive an agency fee at closing on that, and that is, what makes up essentially the funds on hand for the funding course, and that has been slowly depleting over time, obviously, with the auditing fees and everything every year.
So this was a kind of one-off for the chiropractic college.
Yeah. And the dissolution for this is not likely to be simple in all the county supervisors, because the funding course is actually, I don't want to misstate the language, I don't think it's specifically this, but it's sort of a division of the county. It was actually created by the Huntington County Board of Supervisors.
Sarah, is there a year when the bond runs out or it's over with, or will you, the true, I don't know how you call that, but when's this thing end? When could it end possibly?
Kelly, do you know that off the top of your head?
Every year they let me know how much of the bond has been paid back, so whenever that happens, different amount every year. And I might be able to look back and see.
If the supervisors have to approve ending this, why can't we transfer the bond to the supervisors and let them deal with it?
Exactly. Now, why is the IDA sort of the repository for all these things, with all the associated expenses of overhead?
Well, this is not the IDA, so don't get confused. I mean, we
All right,
are.
you're right.
Different agencies.
You're right. I apologize. It's different. It's not the IDA. I think it's a legacy, it seems to me, from a distance, a legacy of the county just shoving administrative responsibility and financial responsibility away from their own desks onto someone else's desk. And, it doesn't seem like that's to our benefit, really, but I wasn't there at the time, and maybe that was the only thing that could be done. And
I don't know that that's the case. So the IDA actually originally held the bond for the chiropractic college. This was back before reform came into place for IDAs regarding the facility. There were changes made, and that's what prompted the funding corp to be started, and for the bonding to run through the funding corp to be facility bonding.
A lot of IDAs, when that happens, created these funding corps. It happened
Why is it across the state?
What's that? Yes,
And what year was that?
it was before Sarah, maybe 2018, maybe 2018?
Yeah,
Does that sound right?
approximately.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the county's involvement is, I think purely just a matter of the way this organization has to be formed. And not necessarily a comment on them, shutting certain things off.
Could the responsibility for this funding corporation be transferred to the new county?
No,
Okay, so we live with it. Great. There's a allied medical services school operating in the county. That's a good thing. Help make it happen. That's good. That's it.
The problem I see with this though is some IDAs throughout the state have staff, either run by the IDA or run by the county. We're not like that. We have a small staff that is saddled with a lot of things that's way above what, I don't wanna say capabilities, but what your time allows. So I just wish we could cut ties to a lot of these things and concentrate on, like we were talking in the beginning, about an audit that actually shows what we're gonna do for the next 3 or 4 years. And forget about all these other things that actually don't make us money, but do cost us money.
Correct.
But I agree with that. Life is what it is, and sometimes you can't change it.
Well, and also, we don't know what the fund balance is, like when's the money gonna run out, but the obligation continues.
so we will do long-term forecasts for all 3 agencies at the full board meeting in October. And I will ask Ellie to pull the P&L balance sheet for both the EDC and the funding corp, so we can have those financial statements on the agenda for the board to review again in October, so that everybody has the full picture when we're talking through the budget and everything.
Can we have them for the meeting that we just scheduled? Yes. Okay. Not the 14th.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.